If you are like 40% of sellers out there, closing is the hardest part of your sales job. The crazy thing is, it doesn't have to be. A lot of sellers go about this all wrong. They try and close leads at the end of the sales process rather than throughout the entirety of it. They use old, weird, cliche sales closing techniques, which just annoy your prospects and push them over to your competitors. And so in this video, we're going to cover the benefits of closing and then how to go about doing it throughout the entirety of the sales process for a framework that we call micro-closing. Hi, my name is Will and I make selling simple. Now, why is closing good for sellers? Well, it keeps the buyer on the straight and narrow rather than going on all this long random process and then maybe getting to the close. If you micro close over and over and over throughout the sales process, you keep everyone on track. This is important because there's often a disconnect between where the buyer thinks they are in the buyer's journey and where the seller knows that they are in the sales process itself. And when you continually close throughout the entirety of the sales process, everyone knows where they are, what the next stage is, and how to get there. And this is good for your buyers as well, because clear next steps, a yes or a no, using the micro-closing framework we're going to talk about in this video, means that there's no uncertainty. If you don't have clear next steps in your sales process, the buyer doesn't know where they're at. They don't know if they should be fighting for budget. They don't know if they should be trying to influence the other decision makers within the account to make the deal happen. And so often, they do nothing. They sit on the deal, they fall into the status quo, you drop down their priority list from 1, 2, 3 down to priority number 47, and the sellers who are up here at the top of the priority list, they're the ones that get the share of the wallet. They're the ones that get the budget. They're the ones that get the deals done. You've got to understand that closing is not a selfish process. It is important for the buyer, the seller, everyone else who's also involved in the entirety of the problem that the buyer is trying to solve being solved. In fact, closing is often the best way for you to help the buyer get this solution solved quicker than what they even thought was imaginable. So that leads us to the question, how do we close a buyer throughout the entirety of the sales process without coming across all slimy and salesy and old school and gross? Because we don't want to experience that, and a buyer certainly doesn't want to experience that either. They want to work with a pro. They want to work with someone who's done deals like this many times, someone who can solve their problem. And so to achieve our closing goals, we're going to use what's called the micro-close framework. And it's dead simple. There are two questions, question A and question B. And we're going to ask the prospect question A, and then depending on what they say, we might ask them question B. It's literally as simple as that. Question A is, does it make sense to? Does it make sense to get the contract signed today so we can move things forward? Does it make sense to get Jill on a call tomorrow morning so that we can see what she thinks about this project? Does it make sense to? Does it make sense to? Does it make sense to? You should be sick of saying it, and your buyers at a certain point should be sick of responding to this question. What we're trying to do here is remove all of the emotion from the closing process. It should be straightforward and logical. You are genuinely asking the buyer, does it make sense to do this next step and move things forward? If the buyer says yes, then congratulations, you just micro-closed. It is literally as simple as that. Now, what happens though if you say, hey, does it make sense to get the contract signed this morning? And the buyer says no. Well, that's when you move over to question B. And question B is just as simple as question A. It's, hey, well, what do we need to do to move this forward? So I'll give you that quick scenario. Does it make sense to get the contract signed tomorrow morning so we can move things forward? No, it does not make sense to get the contract signed and move forward. Okay then, Mr. Prospect, Mrs. Prospect. What would it make sense to do? Oh, well, I'm not in tomorrow morning, so I can't do it then anyway. How about we do it on Thursday instead? Okay, great. Then we look back to question 1. So if I get the paperwork done, would it make sense for you to sign the contracts Thursday morning and then we can move things forward? And then hopefully we get a yes. And this is what we're going to do over and over and over to keep, again, our buyers on the straight and narrow. Most sales processes go something like this, and then they come back, and then they come back a week later, and then maybe they close at the end of it. We want it to be a straight line from A to B, from prospect to buyer. That's what we're trying to achieve. So hopefully that makes sense, but let me give you a few examples here and then a slight twist on question B and how you can improve the effectiveness of it. So question A. It looks like a good fit. Does it make sense to get started? Or you could be asking, okay, well, does it make sense to move forward so that you limit your downtime to a minimum? And you can see with both of these questions here, we're being positive. The buyer should want to move to the next logical step because of the benefit for them. We get started quicker, or we limit your downtime to a minimum. So that's question A. Pretty straightforward. Question B, we can enhance slightly, and you can go as far into this as you like. And again, the book Selling Made Simple covers this in much more detail. But for question B, we can add what we call an understanding statement, then some social proof, and then we can suggest a next best step. Because sometimes you're going to ask the buyer, well, what would the next step be? And they go, I don't know, you're the salesperson, you've implemented this product or service many times before. What do you think the next step is? And so we can preempt that by nudging the buyer towards a specific next step. So let me give you an example. We might say, I understand, and this is our understanding statement. We're trying to build a bit of sympathy, a bit of empathy here with the buyer, a bit more rapport, and then we lead into a case study. So Barry's marketing agency felt the same way that you do. They solved this problem with X thing, and then they got Y benefit. Would it make sense to try X thing? So for example, we might say, hey, does it make sense to get started with Salesman.com Academy? No, it wouldn't make sense. And you might go, okay, I understand. We worked with, and let's say we're trying to sell Salesforce on some sales training. We worked with HubSpot, one of your competitors. At this point, they got half their team signed up to the program. They saw the ROI that it generated, and then they got the rest of the team signed up later on in the quarter. Would it make sense to get half of your sales team at Salesforce signed up today? So here you can see again, we're nudging the buyer, we're keeping them on the straight and narrow, we're nudging them towards the outcome that we all want, which is their problem solved, which also hopefully coincides with us making some commission on a deal as well. So that is the micro closing framework. They are the benefits of closing throughout the entirety of the sales process, rather than letting it become a big, stressful, gross, pressured moment at the end of the sales process. And if you enjoyed this content, why not click the video that's on the screen right now and continue making selling simple.